Thank you for tuning in to this special session of What is the State of Healthcare Cybersecurity? We finished out October, a National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, with a joint cybersecurity advisory that was co-authored by 3 different agencies. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS. And what was their goal? Well, it was to provide a warning to those that are in healthcare, whether in the private or public sector, about increased ransomware activity that are targeting the healthcare and public health sector. And now this advisory goes on to describe the tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, used by the cyber criminals to target you. And what's their goal? Well, ultimately, financial gain. And they'll do this by infecting systems with malware, which would often lead to ransomware attacks, data theft, and the disruption of healthcare services. But now you know that this advisory was updated the day after, on October 29th, 2020, to include other information on different types of malware that would be loaded, whether it's Conti, TrickBot, Bazaar Loader, Ryuk. But also they went on to describe other indicators of compromise and YARA rules that you can implement for detection. But something that they're aware of is that they want you to take timely and reasonable precautions to protect your network. But they also understand that it could be challenging during this time of COVID-19. During this pandemic, really, you have to balance the risk when determining your cybersecurity investments. Those are the things that they had there in their key findings in the beginning of these, in the midst of these 22 pages. And so once again, we thank you for tuning in for this special session. What do we have in store for you? Well, we're going to just start off and just show you just some of the things that have been happening throughout just 2020. And then as we go through, we're going to see, well, how might some of these attacks start? And then we'll be able to look at some scenarios as to how the endpoint might get infected. And then perhaps some of the things that begin to happen once an endpoint has been compromised and what the end result might be. And then we'll have a nice opportunity for you to kind of have a mock session as we look at a little dramatization. And then we're going to go through and see, well, if you could go through this event again, if you knew what the outcome might be, could you stop it? So, well, there's much in store. So once again, thank you for tuning in, and let's get into our special session. Now, this topic is vital because healthcare compliance comes into the picture. And although I've been in IT for over 20 years, it wasn't until 2010 that I was introduced to HIPAA privacy and security. But in 2010, that's when the HITECH Act was enacted. It was a compliance deadline, and it would strengthen the HIPAA protections and rights related to an individual's health information, meaning that there was the ability to significantly increase the ability to impose civil money penalties for violations. Previously, it was $100 for each violation, or $25,000 for all identical violations of the same provision. But now there would be a maximum of $1.5 million for all violations of an identical provision. Now that was a game changer, because that could put many healthcare companies out of business. But now 2013 was a pivotal year, because that was the year my wife and I started this business. And another compliance deadline was coming about, the HIPAA Omnibus Rule. Now, once that went into effect, that really changed healthcare IT. In putting together the HITECH Act and Omnibus Final Rule, because among many things, business associates of covered entities were now directly liable for compliance within certain aspects of the HIPAA privacy and security rules of requirements. But you know what that also meant for us, outsourced IT taking care of healthcare covered entities? Is that we too could be liable for civil money penalties if we did not comply with these certain aspects of the HIPAA privacy and security rules, meaning having business associate agreements in place. And so that was a game changer also, because now we had to learn how to apply these different aspects or just leave healthcare altogether. Pricing went up for us. All sorts of things we had to learn, different aspects of compliance, comply with it ourselves, and assist you in the healthcare to do the same. So although rules have been enacted and strengthened on the federal and state levels, what has been the outcome? Healthcare is under attack. Business healthcare entities are being held for ransom. Data is extracted. Patients aren't able to receive the care. At times, because of ransomware incidents, patients are being rerouted to other facilities. They're not able to care for them as accurately. And why is that? Because you rely on the equipment that you have. And these cyber attacks are happening every millisecond of every day. Now we understand that you're in healthcare. You're a professional, and you could do your job without connected equipment. You could do your job without the internet. We know that you can look at a patient with the tools that you have and many times assess them correctly and give them a proper diagnosis and treatment. But we also realize that the equipment that you have allows you to be more effective, to be more thorough. But the problem that arises is, what if the information has been compromised? Could it lead to an improper diagnosis, improper treatment that could dramatically affect the patient care and their outcome? So what role do we, as cybersecurity professionals, IT technologists, play? We realize that we are part of the patient care. Although indirectly, we help you to provide critical services by working hard to keep your systems updated. Do our best to keep them secure, because we know that this has a direct impact on patient care and sustainability. Now we know that you didn't go to school to become a cybersecurity professional. You were there to take care of the health of people, and you do it well. And our goal, if at all possible, is to prevent you from being on the wall of shame or minimizing your credibility and your reputation because of a cyber event. And we know that's not planned, a cyber incident. We just want to reassure you that you're not the only one who is impacted whenever there's a compromise, a cybersecurity incident, breach. We too, as security professionals, also carry a measure of concern when it comes to protecting data. Now Justin, he was asked what's the scariest breach that he's ever experienced. Now he works for a cybersecurity company, Ascend Technologies. Now they have offices in Nebraska and Chicago. Listen in to this part of the interview when he answers this question. What is the scariest breach you have ever experienced? Now it's quite sobering. Take a listen.
One that sticks out in my mind forever is a hospital that we deployed some anti-malware technology for. It detected something, and on one of the computers was a cancer laser, essentially, that cut tumors out of patients. It had Conficker on it, I remember. And after they had discovered it, the hospital contacted the manufacturer of the laser, and they said, you can't change that system, you can't patch it, you can't do anything to it, or it'll void your warranty. And that hospital chose essentially to leave that malware and that system in place instead of replacing it or pursuing legal action that I'm aware of. It made my spine shake that we were going to leave malware on a machine that cut into human bodies was its purpose. That stuck in my mind forever as the state of healthcare cybersecurity at that point in time.
Now, was that sobering? But his experience was not his alone. You see, working in healthcare IT, we too have run into devices, diagnostic equipment that was infected. They're used daily to assess patients. And we ran into one that too had the Conficker. Now this worm, it wreaked havoc on this one office, this one practice, as it went through stopping at this diagnostic equipment, starting there rather, and then worming its way through the network, trying to crack passwords, testing them, locking users out. Now we ended up sending that piece of equipment back to the manufacturer, and they wiped it. And we removed everything on the network. And now how did it begin? As best as we know, it started with a USB device. You see, they would plug this USB into this diagnostic equipment to extract the images. Well, that USB infected the diagnostic equipment, and then they would plug it into the computers. And each day, this would continue happening until we found out what was really going on. You see, whenever they plugged it into a computer, the AV that we had on there, the endpoint security, well, it would identify that malware and clean it out. But guess what they would do each day? They would plug it back in to this diagnostic equipment, and it would get reinfected, and then they would go through that process all over again. Now, it wasn't until a process of elimination that we realized what was happening. And then we gathered all the USB devices and had them all cleaned and sanitized. And then we had this piece of equipment shipped back to the manufacturer, and they wiped it. And now all was good. Until 5 years later. Well, guess what happened? There was a reemergence of Conficker. This time, there was increased security within the practice. But it was contained within this particular device. Now, how did we know it was still there? Well, we would see reports on the firewall as we would measure what was happening, what was trying to come in or go out, and we would see spikes in the network activity. But it was scheduled to happen every few hours, and then it would stop. And then we were able to track it down through some threat hunting, and we identified it, and then we were able to put it into remission. However, the Conficker is still there. We just kind of disabled it for the moment. But it's still in use. It's still infected. How many practices might have the same issue? How many are running still XP computers or Windows 7 computers that are no longer receiving security updates? How many are on your network? You see, this is a risk that perhaps could lead to a breach that could impact patient information, patient data, and you're not even aware of it. So what's the question that you really want to ask yourself? Is the risk really worth it? One device can affect the many. Would you allow someone into your office now during this time of COVID without a mask? Well, many of you we know would not. You're not willing to take that risk. And so our goal is here to help you to protect your organization. Our goal is not to grind the business down to a halt, but to implement security systematically and proactively, so that things like Configure and other uh, types of malware, don't even come near your equipment. We want to make sure that all connected devices are working to their optimal efficiency so that you can do what you signed up for, taking care of people. So how might an attacker gain initial access? Well, in the previous example, it was via a USB device. Now, anyone could have found this USB device, but it was one that they used regularly at this particular practice. But we also found out that they would take it at home. They would take the USB device home. So it's very possible that it was plugged in to a home computer and their computer was infected. Either way, it was infected. Now that's how initial access can be, is one scenario. Another way is through email attachments, exploitable applications, web browsers, Chrome exploits. Now many times through emails, documents are weaponized. There may be pop-ups for these exploitable applications like Flash, or there's drive-by Chrome exploits. You may download a plugin, and guess what? Now initial access is what they have. And now you're compromised. And where does this lead you? Well, we know that the end result isn't bad. In the previous example, it resulted in the whole network of being compromised with a worm. So what can you do? Well, you be on the lookout for anything that doesn't look right. Where did the attachment come from? Are you sure it's from someone that you know? Are you allowing things to run that you shouldn't? Are you running as an administrator? Are you sure that you need this particular plugin? And another thought, that USB device, if your employees are taking home a USB device that could have patient information on it, then are you sure that it's not being exploited somehow? So many things when it comes to healthcare. And so certainly be vigilant. Do what you can to protect patient information. Now, what could be the result if initial access was made and there was compromise? Could there be exfiltration of data? How long would it take until it was discovered, identified? Would it be weeks? How long would it take before containment would happen? The average persistence has been 100 days before it's even discovered. But then what happens then? Well, in order for the compromise to happen, well, it bypassed any preventative endpoint solutions that you had in place. Maybe your AV, which was only looking at signatures. That might be compared to the coronavirus right now. There's no signatures, no vaccination for it to prevent it. Exfiltration, is your data leaving? It could be leaving by means of something that you use often, Dropbox. But either way, you may not notice it. Maybe you have active network monitoring, or if you don't, it bypasses it. And now the discovery. Maybe it's not by you. Maybe you're informed by your customer or law enforcement. What does it cost to contain it? It has been mentioned that it could cost up to $75,000 in time and materials to contain what it takes in the event of a ransomware event and otherwise, and even what it takes to implement better security measures. Many times these things aren't budgeted. So wouldn't it be a good time to begin to budget now? so that you can prevent the initial compromise if possible. And even if it happens, can you discover it sooner than weeks, months, or years? Perhaps if it's discovered within minutes, that could prevent the exfiltration and move the containment up to the point that now it costs you less. Of course, if you can prevent it, see how much money you end up saving. And so this is just a nice example of the breach timeline. But the problem is most businesses don't even know that they've been compromised. They haven't discovered it yet. So what is happening in your network? Are you aware? Perhaps you think all is well. Everyone that we've worked with that thought that they had no problems, they were actually compromised and didn't know it. Would you like to see a demo of how initial compromise might happen? I will introduce you to a security tool called Kali Linux. Now we're going to just show you what initial access would look like. Now just to make it exciting, you'll get to see in the notes, as you can see there on the right, in a text document, commands that can be copy and pasted. You see many bad threat actors, and what they will do, they will do their reconnaissance. They'll find out what's on the network, gather the IP addresses, and then methodically start to build out what they need to do. And so it's somewhat scripted. It's not just, well, let's just see what happens, and now we can begin to craft the payload. Well, this was going to be in the form of an email. Perhaps your practice is hiring, and someone sends you a resume. But what you don't realize is that this resume has been weaponized. And so they send it to your HR department, and you receive this. It says this document is protected. What do? Well, somehow you're going to try to open it. This could be someone that you're hoping will be a good candidate. Now, they're a specialist in their field. So now you go to open it in Word, and they say, well, this document is protected. Well, what do? Well, it says enable content. And so you read it, and you say, well, let me enable the content. I need to be able to look at this resume. This person certainly looks like they could be what we're looking for by what they wrote in their email. And so you go to enable content, and then what happens? As you can see, macros are disabled. You click enable content, and oh man, you can't open it. So what do you do next? Well, he says, I don't have the right Word version. You think, well, surely this must be updated. Maybe it's a problem with my computer, so I'll send it to someone else and see if they can open it themselves. And then maybe they say, I'm getting the same error. Maybe so-and-so can open it. Now, what is just happening? Well, in the background, these macros is what caused initial access. So the beauty is now that you just save the hacker, the bad actor, the trouble, because now, instead of one device, now maybe there's 3 that the threat actor was able to gain initial access, as you can see here. As sessions were opened up. Now they're communicating. They have initial access. And their goal is to establish what they call a foothold. Because they don't want to have to go through this process each time of getting you to open up an email. And so now a foothold is established. And so now what do? Well, perhaps no doubt it's a Windows device, so they're running antivirus. So what do? Well, they're beginning to interact with the session, meaning that computer. Now let's just see what we can do to establish a foothold, which is set. Now It doesn't matter whether you turn the computer on or off. Well, let's just test it and make sure. See if we can get a screenshot. See what's on, what they're working on at the moment. And here it comes. You can see it saved. Yep, they opened it. They opened up my document. Thank you very much. Now all of this is invisible to the end user at this point. So what's next? Well, you might as well see it. Is there anything good, anything juicy? I mean, this is HR. What do they have in their documents? Oh, looks like there's some pictures. There's passwords. Most businesses aren't using password managers, so they store them in files, sticky notes. That might be something good to have. So you want to make sure that that gets downloaded. And there's something else. There's other pictures. There's all sorts of things. And let's see if we can download whatever's in their documents. But let's just see about this picture. I wonder what is this person like? Well, there's a passed out picture. Anything incriminating? What does that look like? Well, we have it downloaded. Well, let's see. How does this look? Well, there we go. So much for our HR director. Now, of course, this is staged. This is a dramatization. But the end user wouldn't know any of this was happening. They wouldn't really notice any impact to their network or anything. But now the bad actor could have access to all of your files, download them, exfiltrate data. Perhaps, let's say it's time to find out, are any of these passwords any good? Let's see what else we can get. Well, we're going to record any keystrokes that you make. And we're going to show you just by opening up a browser. And we're going to use an example website. And this could be any. Maybe it's your portal that you use for your files for HR. Maybe it's accounting software that you're using. Because perhaps you did send that file to more than one user. And so you can just imagine now pulling up a browser, anything that you go to log into. Maybe it's the portal of your EHR, whatever system you're using, and you type in your username and your password. With this key scan, now we'd have the ability to take any of that data and it'd be uploaded to the attacker machine. Now that's scary, because now you're sending all of this out and you don't realize what's happening. So what would you do to prevent this? And worse is what would happen after the bad actor was done. We're going to have you take a look at another dramatization, and so that you can see how this might be played out to a greater degree.
You know what makes wolves such good predators? They're smart. Rather than hunting strong, healthy prey, they go after the weak, the injured, the sick, the most vulnerable. Todd here happens to be the CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer, of one of the medical world's biggest software companies, which means he's in charge of keeping all their data safe should the bad guys come knocking. At the moment, Todd is experiencing some chest pains. Maybe he ate some bad fish, huh? but I know what's really going on here. Tons of hospitals use Todd's company to host all their patient data in the cloud. Now, if I can remove him from the equation, no one here would have the authority to take the company offline and secure all that data during an attack. So last week, I paid his doctor a little visit.
Carmela, the doctor will see you now?
Good luck with that hip, Carmela. At offices like this, people are rarely at their desk for long. Of course, that wouldn't be a big deal if their smartphones could automatically lock down their PCs when they walked away. Right now, I'm hiding some malware that will allow me to bypass all their protections. This old PC, they'll never be able to detect or remove it. This way I can access Todd's file, and thus all his prescriptions. Just like that, I was able to mess with the dosage of his blood pressure medication, the side effects of which are dizziness and really bad indigestion. And now, a trip to the hospital, just like I planned.
Any family members you want us to contact?
My wife, but I don't want to worry her. I'm sure it's nothing.
Oh, it's gonna be something, all right. Most people think hospitals are scary. They've got no idea. Hospitals just like this one might be home to some of the most advanced medical equipment on Earth. But, like most businesses, they're also crawling with unsecured printers like this guy. Without BIOS-level protection to keep it safe, anyone can install just about anything on here. Now, that little software update just allowed me to create a backdoor directly into their network. I just changed his name in the system. Seriously, this thing is like a sieve.
And take good care of it, John.
John? His name's Todd. You can't even keep his name straight. Now, if someone, his wife, or say anyone from his security team back at the office calls looking for him in an emergency, no one's gonna be able to find him. Sweet smell of success. Get comfortable, Todd. Things are about to get real interesting thanks to that old printer. If it had threat detection, it would have stopped my attack before it started. But since it doesn't, there's nothing to stop me from using it to print out some results I made all by myself.
Here are the revised labs, doctor. Okay, thank you. We are gonna have to increase your medication. You're gonna feel a little groggy, but it's okay.
Talk about the gift that keeps on giving. Now he's gonna sleep through the night. Guess we no longer have to worry about him answering that cell phone over there. You're probably wondering why I go through all this trouble. Well, I'll show you. 3, 2, 1.
This is good.
You're right about that.
Am I the only one seeing this?
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
We need to call Todd.
They take it upon themselves to cut off every hospital on their network, or hope and pray that Todd will miraculously appear to save the day. But he ain't coming.
What am I looking at?
Sir, it appears there's been a data breach.
Yeah, I can see that.
Where the hell is Todd?
At the moment, we don't know where he is.
You don't know.
Someone is stealing all of our medical records.
From all of our hospitals, and you don't know where the hell Todd is?
I love a good mystery. Don't you? I'm sorry, Dave. It's not personal. With their chief information security officer out of the picture, they're basically paralyzed. Even though they've spent a ton making their network super secure, it turns out the PCs attached to it were not. Does this thing have hardened multi-factor authentication? Nope.
Even the backup servers have been compromised.
Hardware enforced protection to stop these poor folks from exposing everyone every time they clicked on a bad link? Negative. Without anything like that to stop me, my malware can devour every file it touches. Time to dial up the fun. I now have in my possession the health records of millions of patients. All because I hacked one doctor's office, one hospital, and made one guy disappear. Let's put Todd back on the grid, shall we? Oh, come on. You didn't really think I was just gonna leave him here, did you?
Sir? Your wife is on the phone.
Yeah, Todd's okay.
Hey, honey.
Though I can't say the same for his company. But for me, this is a whole lot bigger than them. This is about getting the world to see all the holes in the system. So we can tear it down, piece by piece. Weakness by weakness. So we can rebuild it. And to those of you in the hallowed seats of power and government, know this. You're next.
HP Business Printing, the world's most secure printers. HP Elite PCs, the world's most secure PCs.
You know what makes wolves such good predators? They're smart. Rather than hunting strong, healthy prey, they go after the weak, the injured, the sick, the most vulnerable. Todd here happens to be the CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer, of one of the medical world's biggest software companies, which means he's in charge of keeping all their data safe should the bad guys come knocking. At the moment, Todd is experiencing some chest pains. Maybe he ate some bad fish, huh? But I know what's really going on here. Tons of hospitals use Todd's company to host all their patient data in the cloud. Now, if I can remove him from the equation, no one here would have the authority to take the company offline and secure all that data during an attack. So last week, I paid his doctor a little visit.
Carmela, the doctor will see you now.
Good luck with that hip, Carmela. At offices like this, people are rarely at their desk for long. Of course, that wouldn't be a big deal if their smartphones could automatically lock down their PCs when they walked away. But right now, I'm hiding some malware that will allow me to bypass all their protections. This old PC, they'll never be able to detect or remove it. This way I can access Todd's file, and thus all his prescriptions. Just like that, I was able to mess with the dosage of his blood pressure medication, the side effects of which are dizziness and really bad indigestion. And now, a trip to the hospital, just like I planned.
Any family members you want us to contact?
My wife, but I don't want to worry her. I'm sure it's nothing.
Oh, it's gonna be something, all right. Most people think hospitals are scary. They've got no idea. Hospitals just like this one might be home to some of the most advanced medical equipment on Earth. But, like most businesses, they're also crawling with unsecured printers like this guy. Without BIOS-level protection to keep it safe, anyone can install just about anything on here. Now, that little software update just allowed me to create a backdoor directly into their network. I just changed his name in the system. Seriously, this thing is like a sieve.
I can take good care of you, John.
John? His name's Todd. You can't even keep his name straight. Now, if someone, his wife, or say anyone from his security team back at the office calls looking for him in an emergency, no one's gonna be able to find him. Sweet smell of success. Get comfortable, Todd. Things are about to get real interesting thanks to that old printer. If it had threat detection, it would have stopped my attack before it started. But since it doesn't, there's nothing to stop me from using it to print out some results I made all by myself.
Here are the revised labs, doctor. Okay, thank you. We are going to have to increase your medication. You're going to feel a little groggy, but it's okay.
Talk about the gift that keeps on giving. Now he's going to sleep through the night. Guess we no longer have to worry about him answering that cell phone over there. You're probably wondering why I go through all this trouble. Well, I'll show you. 3, 2, 1.
This is good.
You're right about that.
Am I the only one seeing this?
Oh no.
Oh, yes.
We need to call Todd.
They take it upon themselves to cut off every hospital on their network, or hope and pray that Todd will miraculously appear to save the day. But he ain't coming.
What am I looking at?
Sir, it appears there's been a data breach.
Yeah, I can see that.
Where the hell is Todd?
At the moment,
We don't know where he is.
You don't know.
Someone is stealing all of our medical records.
From all of our hospitals, and you don't know where the hell Todd is?
I love a good mystery. Don't you? I'm sorry, Dave. It's not personal. With their chief information security officer out of the picture, they're basically paralyzed. Even though they've spent a ton making their network super secure, it turns out the PC's attached to it. We're not. Does this thing have hardened multi-factor authentication? Nope.
Even the backup servers have been compromised.
Hardware enforced protection to stop these poor folks from exposing everyone every time they clicked on a bad link? Negative. Without anything like that to stop me, my malware can devour every file it touches. Time to dial up the fun. I now have in my possession the health records of millions of patients. All because I hacked one doctor's office, one hospital, and made one guy disappear. Let's put Todd back on the grid, shall we? Oh, come on. You didn't really think I was just going to leave him here, did you?
Sir? Your wife is on the phone.
Yeah, Todd's okay.
Hey, honey.
Though I can't say the same for his company. But for me, this is a whole lot bigger than them. This is about getting the world to see all the holes in the system. So we can tear it down, piece by piece. Weakness by weakness. So we can rebuild it. And to those of you in the hallowed seats of power and government, know this. You're next.
HP Business Printing, the world's most secure printers. HP Elite PCs, the world's most secure PCs.
Now, no doubt you agree that dramatization by HP was sobering. We saw just in our demo how initial access could begin. But now HP took it to the next level. Those are things that can happen after the initial access has happened, after credentials are stolen, records, ransomware, backups. But a little bit about us. Well, that's Elizabeth. She's the boss. And me, well, I'm the tech. I speak geek, I speak tech, she interprets. She's good with people. Everyone loves dealing with her. But now we're going to have a nice opportunity to look at some lessons learned from the dramatization, the demo. And then we're going to look at some scenarios. An example breach timeline. And then we're going to end it with some takeaways. So let's begin with lesson 1. Perhaps we've had the same experience, sitting in the exam room waiting, and there it is, the computer's unlocked. Patient records are on the screen. Perhaps they're yours or the previous patient. And you just want to sneak a peek, satisfy your curiosity. What does it say about you? Perhaps it's even someone that you know. But this could have been solved simply by locking the computer. And we saw in that dramatization that she stepped away from the computer and left it unlocked. And really, that's all it would have taken for her, was to hit Windows L to lock the computer. Perhaps that would have been enough to deter, to cause the bad actor to reboot the computer and then infiltrate. Maybe he would have been caught by that. There's lesson 1. Always lock the computer whenever you leave your desk. Another lesson that we learned is once he sat down, he was able to have access to PowerShell. Now that's inherent within Windows 10. But do end users need to have access to PowerShell? Many bad actors will use PowerShell to run malicious things, to use Windows against itself, against you. Having proper endpoint protection to prevent unnecessary things from being used by end users is another lesson. Only allow the user to have access to what they need. They don't need access to everything. Stop PowerShell. Prevent administrative things from running. Let's take another lesson. What is on your network? Who is connecting to the network? And we saw that's all it took was a simple USB device that was armed to exploit a printer. Could have been your computer. It could be a piece of diagnostic equipment that you use for your patients. Whatever the case, do you know what's on your network? Do you have an inventory of all the devices? Are they updated? Are they secure? Do you keep track of USB devices? Is there patient information on them? Is it encrypted? Who's trying to connect to your network? Is your guest network the same network that your employees connect to? Or the same network that all your computers reside on with patient information? Are all the devices on your network connecting to the internet? Or are they connecting to other computers on your network? You see, connectivity is a risk. If you don't know the answers to those questions, could you be compromised and not know it? One thing's for sure. What we learned in the dramatization, it's real. If you don't know what's on your network, guaranteed bad actors will find out. They'll begin to inventory what devices are connected to your network. As you can see, they were doing an Nmap scan, finding out what devices are there, what operating systems are they running, are there any vulnerabilities that can be exploited? What are they trying to connect to? Are they trying to connect to the internet? Is there a way that they can be exploited and compromised without anyone knowing that they're there? And that's the scariest part of it all. Because they could be sitting in the network for days, for weeks, for months, years, waiting for the right moment to strike. What's on your network? And is everything up to date? Are they secure? If you do that, well, that could just be the first step, another step, and your layered defenses to prevent bad actors from exploiting your practice. Now, we know that was a dramatization, but if this happened to you, and now your data is being exfiltrated, ransomware is being set to execute, this is a bad day. This is a bad day. Perhaps now you're wondering about HIPAA. You're wondering, what about our backups? Do we have to report and tell our patients? Will it cost us in credit monitoring? Will it have to go in the newspaper? Will my name or the practice name go on the wall of shame? We'll put on the brakes, because we're going to give you an opportunity to start at the beginning, because we don't want this to happen to any one of you. But the reality is, it's going to happen to someone. But perhaps the steps that you take might be able to stop it, or cause them to look for an easier target. Well, let's test your knowledge. So we'll start you off with a scenario first. A stolen laptop. A healthcare system executive, well, they left their work-issued laptop in their locked car while running an errand. But here's the problem. The car was broken into, the laptop was stolen. Oh, there were patient records on there. In fact, thousands of them. More than 10,000. And now come to think about it, there's over 40,000 medical records. And now the thief has access to it. So what do? Well, you realize that the computer was locked. But what about the hard drive? You see, the hard drive did not have encryption. And so the thief could just pull the hard drive out and extract any of the data. But thankfully, it was reported to the police, and it reported to your IT department. And because they had put some security tools on there, well, they disabled remote access and they began monitoring activity. But here's the problem. Although the computer was locked, it had security tools, they were monitoring it. Would they be able to tell if the laptop was never turned on, the hard drive was extracted? No. You see, the thief could have access to the sensitive personal patient data. Now, according to local and state laws, as well as federal laws, in this particular scenario, well, they had to report it. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services was notified, and then their local state was notified in pertaining to data breaches. Now this required some adjustments because now the incident was reported, but what was next? Well, now it was time for remediation, monitoring, operational improvements. You see, this was now the impact. Because after they went and reviewed the security measures with internal staff and IT vendors, seeing what do we have to do to remediate this and future incidents. There's nothing they can do. The data was now stolen. But now for future devices, in the event that an incident like this would happen again, well, now there would have to be some drive encryption on all the devices, some other measures put in. Well, now this would cost them over $200,000 in remediation, monitoring, operational improvements. You see, this data breach, it had an impact, and it cost them some money. But once patients were informed that their information was now out in the public, what would happen to trust? Well, what are some lessons learned from this incident that will prepare you for the next scenario? Well, one, companies must establish and train employees on secure handling of work-issued devices. Now, this also means, are there established procedures and training when employees are accessing work on their personal devices? Two, the device must be safely stored and not in the immediate presence of anyone else. Meaning that if the laptop is going to be in the vehicle, is it securely put away so that when the employee is not around, no one knows that it's there? Three, companies must take steps to encrypt data wherever it is stored or transmitted. And employees must have a clear understanding of the importance of encryption, how to use it, make sure it's enabled. Four, companies must understand and know their responsibilities under the data breach notification laws in our state of Texas. Five, a regular review of the company's security practices is imperative in order to prevent incidents, discover vulnerabilities, and reduce the impact of incidents. Now, this seems like a handful, but knowing how this firm responded in this scenario, what would you have done differently? What are some steps you think the firm could have done to prevent this incident? And as you look at your business, would you say that your business is susceptible to this kind of attack? Especially now. Many individuals maybe they're not working full time in your practice. Maybe some are working from home. Some are using portable devices. How are you going to reduce your risk? Now, these are some sobering questions. But as you think them over, see what things that you can do to improve the security within your practice and protect patient data in your care. And now we're going to give you an opportunity to look at an incident, a data breach scenario within healthcare, and see if you can stop it at the endpoint level. Let's take a look. Here we get to test your knowledge with an example healthcare compromise. Because if you knew the end, where ransomware is executed at your practice, your name is now on the front page. Your practice is on the wall of shame. You're sending out notices to all of your patients. And you think that COVID caused a drop in your business. You're worried that this could be the end. How much might you have to pay? But let's look at the beginning and see how the attackers might gain the initial access. Oh, we know in the dramatization, it was from something on the network that wasn't secure. It was a printer. Are you sure that your printers are secure? In the first compromise, the computer was left unattended. Will you be making a change in your practice to make sure that every time an employee gets up from their computer, perhaps they're using the Windows L and locking it? Removing the passwords off of the monitor, from underneath the keyboard, from in the drawer, under the calendar? Oh, we've seen them everywhere. Making sure it's a unique password, or even putting a password there. Yes, you make sure that there's no compromised credentials. Perhaps they might use a USB device. Do you have endpoint security to block it? You see, then it may be very difficult for them to get the initial access. If they don't have compromised credentials, well, they can't move anywhere on your network. What about that email? You know, you were expecting an email from a patient, a new patient. They downloaded your files that you directed them to, and now they just want to return them to you. They're filled out, they're ready for their appointment. But what you don't know is that their computer is infected. And in fact, all those documents now are laden with malware, just waiting for you to download them, open them, and enable content. And if that happens, it's game over before you know it. Now they will have gained initial access. How do you prevent that? Well, perhaps your antivirus won't recognize the JavaScript or the macros. Maybe it's time to upgrade it and get something different. Perhaps you realize that your disk hasn't been encrypted. And even if they did, even if your computer was turned off, then you can simply just plug in a specific USB device, reboot the computer, change the credentials, and log in as if they were you. And you wouldn't know anything differently. Except in the morning when you tried to remember your password and you thought, maybe I'm just typing it wrong. Can someone reset it? But the damage has already been done and you didn't even know it. And now once you get in, they will perhaps monitor anything that you type and get all of the passwords that you use, but they probably took them already. Would you have been alerted that a password had been changed? You see, these are just some of the ways in which initial access can be gained. And once they're on the network, perhaps they just plugged into a port into your office, and since you didn't get any alerts that there was a new device on your network, or connected to your wireless, or maybe they went through the cameras, or your media system, your Sonos, if you have those, or maybe your outdated diagnostic equipment. Either way, they're on your network now. You couldn't stop the initial access. There were just too many points for them to come in. Are your backups secure? Will they be able to take your credentials and then go into perhaps your cloud backup and delete them as well? If that happens, well, that's the beginning of a bad day. And then they want to make sure you're not alerted by your Windows Defender or any other AV. And so now they find out what are you using, and now we start deleting it. We turn it off. We disable it. Certain AVs allow you to prevent that from happening. But that takes us to step 3. Well, now in order to do some of these other things, even disable, they may need to launch a command console or PowerShell. Would your endpoint security stop them from opening up PowerShell? From reaching out to the internet? Does this computer need to go to Pastebin or Dropbox or OneDrive that isn't part of the company? Do you have DNS security filtering? Content filtering that would prevent something malicious from coming down, but normally it would be encrypted, so it may not even realize that it's wrong anyhow, that it's bad. And then what happens? Your endpoint security has been disabled, and the payload is executed, and now there's ransomware. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do to stop a determined hacker from taking control of your network. But there are things that you can do to perhaps make it tougher. Going back to those things that we talked about in the beginning, after that dramatization, are you using unique passwords? Is your computer locked? Have you enabled encryption? Do you have email security? Are you using unique passwords for your computer, for your backups, for your email? Is your endpoint security just based on signatures? If it is, perhaps it's outdated like any of the signatures for coronavirus right now. There is no vaccine. There is no signature, no vaccine for every piece of malware. And so there's certain types of endpoint security that's based on behavior. That says this doesn't look right. Should this service be doing this? That looks suspicious. Maybe we need to alert you or stop it altogether. Or we don't use PowerShell. Your endpoint security will block it, make sure that it doesn't run, and you're alerted. You see, once behavior becomes recognized, it's just as simple as someone walking into your office, and you notice that they're acting not normal as everyone else. And so you begin to watch them. And then you're tipped off, and you're right. Because was right at the moment that they were ready to pick someone's pocket. You ID'd them, and they ran off. You see, the same thing can happen with endpoint security. With some of the measures, breach detection and response, it will allow you, your IT personnel, to be notified in the event that someone gains initial access and stop them before they do permanent damage, before they come in contact with EPHI, protected health information, and you have to make a report. You have to notify patients. And so continue to study this. See, what can you do to prevent the initial access? What can you do to make it harder for someone to break in? You've turned the alarm, you've locked your practice door, you've turned the alarm on, you can see the cameras. You can manually set off the alarm. It's connected to the police department, connected to the monitoring system. If they notice that someone comes in, the motion sensor it goes off, you get a phone call. The same thing you want happening on your network. So that someone can respond, the alarm can sound, and someone can intervene and prevent you having a bad day. So then, the choice is yours. What adventure will you choose? We certainly hope that after this discussion, you will choose the adventure that secures you, that protects your practice, your employees, your patients, and all the other healthcare businesses and practices connected to you along with their patients. Because it only takes one choice, and they can have lasting effects. So make the right choice. Make the right investment. Stand there among many other smart business owners and secure your practice. Choose the adventure that secures your business for the future.
So we have covered much ground in this discussion, but what are the takeaways? The reality is the threat landscape has drastically changed, so we must be adaptable and learn to adjust. Perfect prevention is unrealistic. We have alarms on our vehicles, on our homes, we have dogs, because we know that someone may still get past one of these defenses. Secure your practice in the same manner. Continue learning. No, you don't have to be a cybersecurity expert. That's for the heroes serving on the back end. Learn from them and take action. Define critical processes. Where is your data? How do you access your data? Who has access to your data? When do they have access to your data? Is your data backed up? What devices are allowed on your network? HIPAA requires a risk analysis. Have you performed one? Since perfect prevention is unrealistic, then prepare your incident response plan so that when you are alerted that initial access has been gained, you know how to respond. COVID-19 tested the business continuity plan of all businesses. Do you have one in place? If not, guess what you should start preparing? We layer the protective measures during COVID-19, and you do it all the time in healthcare. Now, you just have to layer your cyber defenses in the same manner. And don't worry, we can help. Between the combined experience of you and your cyber professional, you can mitigate gaps and reduce risk by taking practical measures. Enjoy the adventure and the experience. If you need assistance, you know how to find us. Thanks for joining, and thanks for your hard work in caring for us.
There is no perfect security. And we've come to appreciate that we can't do this alone. So why should you?